Alright, hello YouTube, hello Twitch, hello YouTube live viewers. Today, we're doing a bit of a special discussion. We're going to be talking about free-to-play, which does not literally mean free. Just think of some kind of free-to-play game like Marvel Rivals or Fortnite. The usual Battle Pass type stuff. I mean, Splatoon 3 has a Battle Pass, but you know, it's not a paid Battle Pass, that kind of deal. Think about that versus the traditional paid Splatoon that we have today. And, yeah, I won't be able to scroll up. Just to go over how we're going to talk about this. Two things. First, this is going to be more open discussion. So, I'm going to go through what you guys have to say. I won't be able to pick every response. I am going to have to pick a few. There is just, like, 300 of you and one of me. So, unfortunately, I can't pick from everyone. And there might be more than 300 later. We did just start. So, you know, keep that in mind. Besides that, I want to give another important disclaimer. Most of the discussion I've seen around this topic has been about picking a side. Has been about, are you on the team free-to-play or team paid Splatoon? And that's not how I want to do this. I don't want you to come out of this discussion having picked a side. That's not my goal today. I don't want anyone to really pick a side right now because the versions of free-to-play Splatoon or paid, you know, the normal paid Splatoon we have right now can be radically different. There are good versions, there are bad versions, there's stuff in the middle. Instead, I do want to talk about what this would be like. Go over the specifics, and I want us to get a better idea of what exactly we're getting into, whether it be free to play or paid. And we're going to start with some easier points. I have some things to go over real quick. And then when we're done with those, I'll open it up to the points chat wants to talk about. And we'll go through and, you know, give our opinions on it. And hopefully, by the end of the discussion, we'll come out of here with a better understanding of what the game could be like. That cool for everyone? And then finally, one more thing. Discussion today is just going to be about this topic. Please do not spam questions or comments or anything else about other topics. We're focusing on that right now. Alright. So, let's start with some really basic assets. Some really basic questions, then we'll get into more complicated stuff, right? First off, let's talk price. How much do you guys think Splatoon 4 would cost? Give me your answers in the chat on what do you think Splatoon 4 will cost. We can assume it's a Switch 2 game, right? How much do you think it costs? Is it the current 60? Is it 70? Is it 80? What do you guys think? Better stay 60? I mean, everyone wants it to stay 60. That's not the question, though. I'm asking how much do you think the game is going to be? Okay. Overwhelming majority, from what I can tell, is $70. Most people think it'll probably cost about $70. And I think I would agree with that, right? That seems reasonable. I don't think it's on the scale of Mario Kart World or anything to be $80, right? Not that I think Mario Kart World should be $80, but like that's, you know, where we're at right now. I think most Switch 2 games are probably going to be $70 games. So, let's assume it'll be like $70. There's another cost to that, though. And that's something else. Nintendo Switch Online. Now, I have seen some people talk about free-to-play Splatoon as if you will not need Nintendo Switch Online. What about DLC? We'll get into DLC in a second. We'll get there. So, a more important point to bring up, and one that I think doesn't have as simple of an answer. If Splatoon were to be free to play, would you need Nintendo Switch Online? Can't discount the console? Yeah, but we know how much the console costs. No matter what, the price is the same. It doesn't matter what version of Splatoon 4 we get. If it's on the Switch 2, the console price is the same. Do you think that you would need to pay for Nintendo Switch Online? Because that's not the case for other free-to-play games, right? Usually you can play the game regardless of any service. But in this case, you would probably need NSO in order to play the game. Alright, I'm trying to get other responses here. Why would it not need NSO? Just because typically other free-to-play games aren't. The idea of free-to-play here is that anyone can try the game whenever. If you need a Nintendo Switch Online subscription, then that is a barrier. Not a huge barrier, but it's in a barrier. So, do you think that they would be willing to drop it or not? There's no right answer here. We don't know. I just want to know what you guys think is more likely. Paladin Knight says, free-to-play doesn't have NSO, because the game is free, that's it. Do you really think they would do that? Do you think they would have one game, or maybe others that are free-to-play if they go with this model? Do you really think they'd have an exception to games that completely don't require the membership when everything else does? Because if you want my personal take, I don't think they're gonna do that. I really don't see that. If it's free-to-play, do you think they'd increase the price of NSO? That, I don't think so. If you lock it behind an expansion pass, I don't think that'd make a whole lot of sense, because how would you price around people who don't have the expansion pass? I don't really see that all or nothing philosophy working out for a game like that. They could give you a trial for it, sure. That's more than fair. If you try out Splatoon 3 or Splatoon 4, you could get like a month or two, right? But I think it's more likely that you'll have to have NSO. Okay. Now we can get to single-player DLC content. Another simple thing to get out of the way, which is, how would they handle single-player content? Because I have a theory about this, right? Here's what I think. I think if Splatoon 4 is free-to-play... Also, did my music just pause? Like, what's going on? Nope, it's just really taking its time to start the next one. Or this song is just really quiet. Sorry, this is just a random playlist chat. I think the way they would handle the game's single player would be very similar to how they've handled DLC now. If Splatoon is free to play, I think the single player would be paid content. Cheaper paid content, but I think it'd be paid. I think probably about $30 for single player would be what I would expect. Same for any paid expansions, right? So say we get a base, I can't even say hero mode, right? I think if we get a single player, that'd probably be like $30. If you want to play a single player, if there's an expansion, that'd be separate. You'd have to pay for that. That sound reasonable? Or is there anyone here who thinks the single player would be free as well? Because to me, I think if Nintendo's going to do free to play, they probably want to make their money back in some way, right? They gotta have some ways where it's more likely they'll get their money back, and I feel like paid single player is already something they're comfortable doing, considering they do them afterward. It's hard to say for sure, because we don't have data. We don't know how much Octo expansion specifically sold. Single player is usually a tutorial sort of deal. That's true. It is usually a tutorial, but do you think they'd give you the entire single player for free? Just because of that? I don't think the single player would be drip fed. I think it'd be a full package deal. They could give you some... I mean, they could just... Like, if the tutorial's a big concern, they could just make a tutorial. There could just be, like, 3 tutorial stages or something that's completely separate from the single player. That could be different. Is there a reason we think Splatoon 4 could be free to play or just hopes? I mean, it's mostly just because it's popular discussion right now, but in terms of would they consider this, let me bring this up, right? Splatoon 3 has a fucking battle pass. Like, Splatoon 3 just straight up has a battle pass. It has a lot of systems that are similar to free-to-play systems. They're just not charged. But, like, the catalog is what you would see on those type of games. That's what it would be like, to some extent. They're experimenting with those systems. So there could be the thought process of see how those systems do, and maybe in the next game we'd push for that. Sure. So I think there's reason to say they're looking at it. It doesn't mean I think they'll pick it or not, because in my opinion, I think it's pretty unlikely Splatoon 4 will be free to play. But I do think it's worth talking about. I feel like Splatoon isn't big enough to be free to play. I mean, S3 and Splatoon 3 sold like what, 10 million in the first 3 months? You'd have way more people if it's free. Because there's no, you don't have to pay for it. So more people would be there. How much more, I don't know. But like 10 million alone is probably large enough. Alright. Let's get to the main points here. Right? Let's switch over to not free-to-play for a second. Right? One argument that I see a lot about free-to-play Splatoon 3 would be that it could extend the life cycle of the game. Because currently, Splatoon 2 and 3 had a life cycle of about 2 years or so. And I think a lot of people are very critical of that, especially now more recently, into saying that that might not be long enough for the type of game they're doing. Because they're obviously trying to keep Splatoon alive for a lot longer of a period of time than their normal games, because that's what, you know, Splatoon is. So, let's talk paid Splatoon first. Forget free-to-play for a minute. How long do you think the lifespan could feasibly be? Not what you want it to be. How much do you think Nintendo would actually make the lifespan of the game? Like, reasonably. Okay, we're between 2 and 4 years right now. 4 years seems to be the high end. But there's a good chunk of people who think 2 years is the maximum too. I think 2 to 3 seems to be the middle ground. I think they'd aim for 4 years. Okay, let me ask those who put 4 years why. Because 4 years is double the time. 4 years is development for the game for twice as long. They have to keep adding stuff for twice as long as normal. Why do you think they would do 4 years if it's still paid? If they don't get anything else, they don't get any more money, why would they do 4 years? What do you think would allow that to be a reasonable decision? Because they wanted to? We're talking about a company. There is no wanting to. There has to be a financial incentive at the end of the day. Nintendo is a billion-dollar company. This ain't about what they want. This is about what they can do, what they think they should do. More paid DLC or paid kits of some kind. Okay. So the idea could just be that they add more. That is paid, alongside the free content. So they'd continue to push more paid Splatoon content, and because of that, they could do it longer. Okay. That's feasible. Do you want that? Do you want a version of Splatoon where you pay $70 for the game, $30 for a DLC, another $30 for a DLC, another $30 for a DLC, and by the end of the game, it's like a $150 game, $120 game? See, now 4 years doesn't sound as appealing. Also, you gotta pay NSO for 4 years, so that's what? Another 80 bucks? Add on top of that? Suddenly, that's a lot less appealing now. You could just not buy the content, but then it's more likely people are going to miss out on Splatoon content. And I'd also like to point out that typically, I don't think DLCs have really gone that far. I think the most expensive, like, DLC for a multiplayer game has got to be, like, Ultimates, right? $25 for Pack 1 and I think $30 for Pack 2. That's like $55. So Ultimate in total is almost double the base price of the game. And I don't think that counts the Mii costumes either. That's already quite a lot. Smash was 60. Okay. So, to rephrase the question, right? How long do you think it would be without massively charging for constant DLCs? If we assume there's like 2 DLCs max, how many years do you think we're getting now? 2 to 3? Right. Okay. So let's be generous here, alright? Let's assume, and this is making an assumption, right? Let's highball it from what we've been talking about. Let's say a paid version of Splatoon 4 will have 3 years of content. We'll get an extra year than we do right now, and there's no big strings attached, right? Nothing that's like supercharged that feels required. Just the usual stuff. Now here's the next question. How long do you think a free-to-play Splatoon's lifespan could be? How long could they add content to free-to-play Splatoon? $8 years, 4 to 6, 5, 9. A lot longer, probably. That's a good answer. Until the money runs dry. Depends on success. Once it goes down, it's hard to go back to the old model. That's true. There isn't really a limit on free-to-play. I think there is a limit. I don't think that's correct. I think there usually isn't a limit, but I think there's a limit here. We're not talking finances right now, Sound. We're just focusing on like one little topic at a time. So this is just lifespan. How long could the lifespan be optimally? What's what we could expect? You know, within a realm of reason. So, first off, for people who say there isn't a limit, here's what the limit is. The next console. Eventually, when we get to the Switch 3 or whatever the hell they do next, right? They'll eventually get to something else. When they do, they have to make a new Splatoon. They're not going to keep the model of a game on a different system eventually, right? Eventually, we have to move on. So I'd say, you know, we'll talk about feasibility in a minute, right? But I think the absolute upper limit is probably however long the Switch 2 lasts. So let's highball it again. Let's say the Switch 2 lasts about 8 years, right? Similar to Splatoon, to the Switch 1, right? And we get Splatoon like this year. So let's say we get that, and that could be a maximum of 8 years. And that's assuming the Switch lasts that long. That's assuming Splatoon is worth it to add content for that long, right? If we get a lifespan of about that long, I don't know, let's estimate 4 to 8 years, right? Because I think if they do free-to-play Splatoon, they want the lifespan to be longer. If they're committing to free-to-play Splatoon, they can't drop it as quickly, right? If they do that, how are they going to make their money? This is possibly the biggest point we ought to talk about right now. How do they make money in free-to-play Splatoon? What are our ideas? Splatoon 2 ended a missile spam shooter. Hell, if we get free-to-play Splatoon 4, there's a risk we go through that again. Actually, it was probably less of a risk. Because if they keep updating the game, they're going to keep patching the game. Monthly subscription. For what? What specifically are we paying for? I don't want these bold statements like just microtransaction. For what? What are we paying for? What's free? What's paid for? Okay, clothes customization's a big one, right? Let's start with that. Customization of, like, the gear you wear in the game. Could they do that with the current ability system? Because I don't know if they can. I think if they wanted to make gear a paid accessory, you know, to some extent, they would have to separate the gear and the ability system. Because otherwise it would be pay to win for the abilities. Yeah? Weapon skins. Okay, if we do weapon skins, then the kit system doesn't work. So that's another thing where we'd have to assume a system changes. What do you think they could do that wouldn't change the current system? Styling the clothes. That's a good point, Sound. So, like, you could buy a shirt, but you'd have to pay to change the color. Or maybe there's stickers you could put on it, or branding, or your ink could have certain glow effects or something like that, right? So it could be more cosmetic effects. You could keep the current system and have the paid DLC, or have the paid part of the Battle Pass be, like, extra customization. Banners, yeah, banners would work. The banners and splash tag system would probably be a great way they could do that, right? That's very feasible. That's not a necessary feature by any means. They could definitely make that something you'd have to pay for. But do you think that's going to make them a lot of money? If you can have, you know, if we can have all the systems we have right now for Splatoon 3 for free, do you think anyone would really pay for that? Do you think people would pay enough to add a little bit of flair to their shirt? Because the answer is probably yes, but not that much, right? I don't think many people would do that. I mean, they could obviously monitor what kinds of stickers and stuff they could put on. I'd just assume it wouldn't be, like, fully customizable. There'd be some moderation there. What most people would pay for would be new game modes. Okay, you can't do that, though. Let's say they add a 5th mode. Let's say capture the flag, right? Forget how that would work. Let's just say capture the flag is a 5th mode, and it's paid. How do you... You'd have to split everyone who paid for it with everyone who didn't. You can't do that easily. Or you would have to do what Mario Kart did, for instance, which is, okay, if one person has the DLC, everyone can get it. But I don't think you can do that when you random match with people. Wouldn't free-to-play screw over the Animal Crossing staff? They could just have different staff. Or more staff. They could have split the teams by now. Who knows? What about full outfit bundles? Okay, let me bring up something right now, okay? Everyone right now has been talking about, oh, I don't know if I'd want to pay for gear and such, right? I've seen that a little bit popping up in the chat. I don't know if I'd pay for gear, right? Let me pause for a second. Guys, we pay for gear. We already do it. Yeah, exactly. The amiibos. We already have paid gear. If anything, we have very expensive paid gear. Each amiibo gives you one shirt, one hat, one shoe. These are like $15 each right now. That's pretty fucking insane, right? Obviously, you get the little figurines and all that too, but it's not that far off. And to be clear, I'm talking from someone who has every single amiibo. I am not immune from the purchasing, okay? I have all of them in my closet right now. I have every Splatoon amiibo. I am someone who has bought all that stuff. Right? Point being, we kind of already have this system. And that system hasn't gone away. They've done it more and more because amiibos are a way Nintendo tries to get money. They made amiibos, like 4 of them, later into the game. Or like 7, I forget the exact numbers. They made amiibos midway through Splatoon 3 because guess what? If they're adding content to the game, they're gonna try to make money. So that said, I think, personally, the most feasible thing I would see is that the gear would be separated, right? If you have, what is it? If you have some gear, that would be, you know, you would get it for free. And there would be some gear that you pay for, similar to what we have now. But because there's no amiibo feature, maybe it's, you know, cheaper. Maybe a bundle of a hat, shirt, and shoes, I don't know, like maybe the captain's outfit, or Agent 8's outfit, or one of the idols' outfit would be like $2 or something. That could be a system. Amiibo emotes? Great. That could be another one. Very simple. You could pay for emotes. We purchase sea snails for money. I hope we don't... Like, in-game coins? Sure, I hope. Banners we talked about, yeah. So there's a few systems, right? But I think the things that people can agree are somewhat reasonable are usually customization, right? If some of the banners, some of the splash tags, some of the locker items, some of the gear and stuff is there, and some of it is paid, I think that would be something people could kind of accept, right? If that's what allows Splatoon to not be $70, that's not that big a deal, right? For most people, that's probably a cheaper experience. No? How do we feel about that? Because in my eyes, if I'm getting the game and I'm paying less than I would pay normally for the game, that's a win for me. If I have to pay $50 to get some of the content in the free-to-play version instead of spending $70 on the full game, I've saved $20. Rather pay all at once for all the content. All right, let me challenge that line of thinking for a second, right? I'd rather pay all at once for all the content. What if there's less content? Because we talked about earlier that free-to-play Splatoon would probably have a longer life cycle. So that means there would probably be certain gear options that would not be available. Are you okay with that if it means there's less stuff? Maybe there wouldn't be something like gold weapon skins if they wouldn't be paid. Maybe there wouldn't be as much gear, etc., etc. Does that change anything for you? Do you think they make us pay for remakes of the old DLC? Like, attached to Splatoon 4? Like, you can play Octo Expansion or Side Order in Splatoon 4? Maybe. I don't know if I would mind that. Because, like, if you didn't play Octo Expansion and you have to catch up, it's annoying to buy Splatoon 2 to have to play it. If there was a separate option to just pay 20 bucks for Octo Expansion, then, like, I think a lot of people would do that. Octo Expansion Remastered DLC would slap. Dude, Octo Expansion with squid rolls? Some levels you can play Splatonas? That'd be fun. If you pay $70 up front, Nintendo has no reason to make more beyond the bare minimum. That's a good point, right? If Splatoon is free to play, there's constant incentive to keep players hooked into the game, then Nintendo has much more of an incentive to make sure the content they're adding is up to par. If it's all paid already, then yeah. We already have skins, it's the single player. Yes, but those aren't paid. That's true, though. I can live without gold skins and stuff personally. Okay, well, I mean, don't think of it as just gold skins. If we get an extra 4 years of content, maybe that's third kits. Maybe that's 5 more maps. Maybe that's a new mode to the game that you wouldn't have. Because it's worth pointing out, we're probably going to have less stuff if it's not free to play. That is the unfortunate reality of the situation. Is if the game is free to play, there's probably going to be more stuff and more frequent stuff. Because the lifespan of the game becomes incredibly important. Third kits for extra money. Okay, let me dispel this. I do not think free-to-play Splatoon needs to have paid weapons or stages at all. I think we would get those for free. I do not think those would be things we would have to pay for. Because as you can see from what we've talked about, there's plenty of things they can do. You don't need to lock things like weapons and stages. Why risk the controversy when it's not necessary? Now, could they do paid weapons? For sure. They could do it. But that doesn't mean they have to, or they will. That's different versions of the system. And what I think is I don't think they have to. I don't think they ever have to make third kits or something like that paid for. I'm not saying they won't do that. I'm saying they don't have to. Okay. Let's drop to another discussion real quick. Let's move on from this for now. Let's talk about something else I saw brought up on Blue Sky a bit. For those who don't know, Splatoon has a bit of a living world right now. Splatoon is a living world, evolves and changes over time. That's kind of a big thing when the new games come out. You get to see how time has passed. If we have a free-to-play model, I'm not saying you couldn't do anything with them. Like, for example, the Grand Fest showed how the tutorial area evolved over 2 years. That definitely works. They could do something similar like that. But it might harm that aspect of the game somewhat. That might be a factor. I don't got a lot to say on this point, but I did want to bring it up. Lack of pay to win would make them more money. I don't think they'd lock weapons. I mean, pay to win, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'd say that. Astrodwarf, the free-to-play model for Splatoon doesn't work because it'd be on an exclusive console. League or TF2 or Warzone work because they're on accessible platforms. Alright, that's another good point to bring up. Let's talk about that. Do you guys think that free-to-play Splatoon can't work because it's exclusive to the Switch? Let's get our thoughts on that point. Okay, let me get a survey real quick. Type 1 if you think it cannot work at all because it's on the Switch. Type 2 if you think it can work despite being console exclusive. Two means it can work, 1 means it can't. This is split pretty even down the middle. So, those of you who put 2, hold on a second. Let's just talk with the people who say it can't work. Why? Why do you think it can't work? Let's just discuss why it can't work. Not why it can, just why it can't. And then we'll switch over and do the other side of things. Right? Let's take a second and just talk about the first idea. I didn't hear what you said. Okay. We're talking about, would it work, would it not work because it's console exclusive? PC is a big user base you're missing out on. That's true, but that doesn't mean it can't work. Do you think a game that has 12 million people who bought it when it's paid would not have enough when it's free to play? So I don't think player base is the issue. There's definitely enough players. Splatoon isn't that big overseas. Splatoon is quite big overseas still. Like, it's not as crazy as Japan by any means, but that's still like, what? 8 million people? Probably at least 5 million who bought the game? And again, that's the numbers for paid Splatoon. Look how Foam Stars ended up. I think Foam Stars might have had other factors that Splatoon did not have. I don't know if the free-to-play is the problem with Foam Stars. I think it had larger problems than that. Ninjala proves it can work. I'm not sure if Ninjala is the game you want to point to either. I'm sorry to diss any Ninjala fans. But I'm not sure that's your big winner either for this argument. Okay. I'm not seeing much for why it can't work. People just think that it might not have enough players. But I don't know if I agree with that. Personally, I don't really see where this lack of player base is coming from. Because I think Splatoon already has a lot right now, and it's paid. And you have to remember, anytime it's not paid, there's going to be more players. I think the controversy would ruin the game on launch. What controversy? We don't know how they're doing it. Unless you think just Splatoon being free to play on its own would cause such a significant controversy that people won't play it. Isn't S3 kind of dead? Is it less active now? Sure, but like, you can find games in most situations. The game is still very playable right now. Splatoon 2 stayed very playable for significantly longer too. And Splatoon 2 was definitely the weaker game at the end of its life cycle. And that stayed alive for like 3 years. Alive enough to function properly. So yes, I think it will probably be fun. You have to have 12 million people spend at least $60 plus DLC sales to make it worth it. Not necessarily. A lot of free-to-play games make most of their money off of very few people who spend a lot. The average consumer does not need to spend $60 to make it worth it. They need to have enough people who spend more money than $60 to make it worth it. Even then, even if that's the case, another problem with that argument to me, right? A free-to-play Splatoon might have a larger amount of players than the game would sell normally. If Splatoon 2's, let's say Splatoon 4 would sell 10 million if it was, you know, paid, and 20 million if it was free-to-play, right? I'm just throwing around numbers that make the math easier. Then each player only needs to make the game $30 to get the same amount of money. Because there's more players, the players don't have to spend as much money for them to make a similar level of profit. Right? So I think that for that reason, I think that it's a little different. That's why I would put it. Alright, let's switch over. Why do you guys think free-to-play Splatoon can work? Despite being a console exclusive. Why do you guys think that wouldn't be a big problem? How many people own a Switch 1? 160 million. People have more interest in the game. Paid Splatoon would be another price barrier. That's true. That's definitely a benefit of free-to-play. It's, you know, you don't have to worry about it as much. Because let's face it, right? Mario Kart is a game that I know a lot of people are considering not buying because it's $80. There is definitely less of a dilemma on playing Splatoon if Splatoon is free. Especially if you haven't played Splatoon before. If you can try out the game and you don't have to worry about your wallet at first, that's probably going to make it easier. I think the extended lifetime is a good reason to do it. That's true. Don't like $80 games, just play Splatoon. Splatoon can appeal despite not being multi-platform. That's true. I'd also just say the Switch is successful enough for it. Like, Switch 2 pre-orders are already going insane. So I'd say that the numbers of people who would have a Switch 2 would probably be enough. Okay. Alright. I'm out of my beginning discussion topics, so let's open it up to chat real quick. What topics do you guys want to discuss about paid Splatoon versus free-to-play Splatoon? What do you guys want to talk about? I think the best option for Nintendo is to keep the Splatfest World Premiere. I think Splatoon having some kind of demo, like you could play the first 7 days free before you have to pay, would be awesome. That is a different thing, though, than what we're talking about. But I do think that'd be very cool. I very much hope Splatoon has that. Salmon Run? I don't think Salmon Run would function too differently. Do you think people who dropped the game after S1 or 2 would come back to free-to-play? I think they would try it, because they can. Would they stick with it? I don't know. But I do think more people would give it a shot who would otherwise not give it a shot. Sure. I think that's a reasonable statement. What would you think the prices would be on things like DLC? Like single-player DLC? Probably like $30, $25, $30. Just basing off the side order price, right? Side order is like what, 25 bucks? Octo expansion was 20. So I'd say like probably max 30 would probably be in line with that pattern. If they were to handle weapons by not making them paid, reworking the gear system, etc. Wait, what's your question, Zip? Okay, I don't see what your point is here. Sorry. Octo expansion was more worth than side order. I mean, yeah, the sky is also blue outside. That's true. Message cap? Aw, oh, rip. I feel like free-to-play Splatoon 4 could be way more content bloated if it goes on for too long. That's true. I think people complain about content bloat with Splatoon 3. I wouldn't say Splatoon 3 is content bloated. The only reason the amount of specials feels bloated is because there's too few kits with them. I don't think that's a problem of too little content. Or too much content. I think that's a problem of too little. Content bloating can't be an argument when Fortnite exists. Okay, but this game isn't Fortnite. Fortnite is not a consistent living world. Fortnite can drastically change its identity. That's how that game works. That's a big part of what happens over time with it. Splatoon is not that. You cannot have all of Splatoon's lore be sucked into a black hole and then redo the whole thing. This is an ever-evolving world, and the things that happen in the past are still a part of that world. Same people say the amount of weapons and specials is quite big right now with too many similarities. I mean, I disagree with that. But, like, I mean, I can't stop anyone from having that take. They could monetize Splatfest? They could, I don't think they would. I think Splatfest being free is common because, like, it is something that gets people to play the game. And you would care about that much more with free-to-play. I'd rather keep Splatoon for myself, but I think a bigger player base for free-to-play is the way to go. That's a totally fair take. I got no comment on that. Nintendo is family-friendly, so microtransactions might not work for it. Yeah, but that company also made Diddy Kong $40. Nothing's off the table, let's be honest. That company also did. I'm never living that down. That screen is burned into my memory. I'll be 80 years old and I'll remember that still. Those are one of those things I will not forget, along with how loud the THX logo is. And IGN's, what is it, 2 out of 10 not enough water? Something like that. Those will never leave my brain. IGN was right, there was too much water in Gen 3. We're getting off topic. Point being, I don't think Nintendo is immune from scummy business practices when it comes to free-to-play. They could totally fuck it up. We would definitely have that possibility. You can monetize inkable walls. I guess they could. Nintendo is already committing scummy business practices right now. I mean, they've done plenty in the past. Okay, good to know I didn't snap to that ink rail. I meant to test that. Free-to-play inherently leads to scummy business practices. Yeah, but so do fully paid games. Okay, I want to bring this up, right? The idea of, like, scummy business practices. Let's talk about Splatoon 2's fucking launch real quick, right? While we're talking about scummy practices. Do you know what's a scummy practice? Launching your game without all of the fucking weapons in the game from the previous game. That was scummy. Do you know how long it took them to add Inkbrush to the game? Like 2 days. They could have had that in at launch, but they didn't because they wanted to drip feed a weapon every single week. Not releasing stuff like Range and Bamboo when they totally could have is scummy. Let's talk Splatoon 3, right, with its catalog. If you miss out on the catalog, despite it not being paid, you still have to complete a catalog later to get the item back. It can't appear in the shop. That's scummy. So, yes, of course, free-to-play games could have poison practices. But so do the games we have right now. It's not like paid games are, like, immune from, like, moral quandaries. Splatoon 2 had a rushed content with not enough of it on launch. That had its problem. Splatoon 3 was better, but it still had those problems. Is there more of a risk with free-to-play? Sure. But the idea that paid Splatoon is completely moral and free-to-play is inherently scummy is not right. Splatoon 1 launched with 5 maps. Okay, yes, but that game gets a pass because Splatoon 1 was like a fucking giant experiment at the time, to the point where they didn't even know if they'd have enough players for ranked. That is an entirely different thing. They knew Splatoon 2 would be a successful game. That's why they made it so fast. They saw, oh shit, a third of every Wii U owners own Splatoon? We're making another one. That was a very easy decision. They said free-to-play incentivizes it more. Which is why I said that's fair. I just want to point out that I believe, like... I believe paid games, including the ones we have, also have scummy practices. I'm confused. Why are we advocating for anti-consumer practices for Splatoon? We're not. We're acknowledging that they're a possibility. We're not advocating for them. The discussion is just that, yes, there is inherent risk. These things can happen with either format. Also, yes, to your point, Winter. Yes, Overwatch 2 switch to free-to-play was like... What is it? Like, they definitely messed up with that. I'm not trying to argue with that. There are definitely examples of doing that wrong, and I think that's a fair thing to be concerned about. Is there a world where you can keep S4 paid but have a free demo? Yeah, absolutely. That would be awesome. That's a different thing, but I would love to see that, sure. Absolutely. I'm worried that free-to-play is already oversaturated. What can Splatoon offer people? I mean, Splatoon is a very different game than something like Marvel Rivals. I think the game itself is already the distinction. Yeah, free-to-play isn't a genre. It's just a monetization type. Like, $60 games are not a genre. What world would a demo not be free? Yeah, this one. The Switch 2. Yeah. We live in that world. we have the paid demo right here, guys. Coming out next month. A $10 tech demo. Maybe S4 being exponentially cheap, then adding microtransactions, turning it into pay at your own price deal is an option. I mean, for sure. I don't think I've heard this song before. Yeah, I know it's from Pokemon. That's what the playlist said. Hero Shooter has a lot. Yeah, but, I mean, Splatoon is very different from Overwatch. Like, whether it's free-to-play or not, I think that will always be different. Free-to-play with paid campaigns would make a lot of the single-player fans happy. I mean, yeah, if you're only here for the single-player, free-to-play Splatoon is probably just a straight-up win because your single-player is just cheaper. Like, I think all the single-player fans, this is just a win. You just get cheaper single-player. I don't know what to tell you there. But I also think if you're here for the single-player, you probably don't really care about if it's free-to-play or not, because, like, you know... You're not there for that part of the game. I don't care if it's free to play or paid, I want actual servers and not peer-to-peer. That's fair. Alright. I think we're going to start wrapping this up here. So, with this discussion wrapping up, let me give some final thoughts here. Alright? Let's talk for a second. Okay? There is a lot of uncertainty around free-to-play Splatoon. How that would work and how they could do it. There's a whole bunch of different ways, and I hope if this discussion helped teach you guys anything, It's that there's so many different ways, so many different questions that need to be answered, so many different things that could happen to change how this would play out. It could be very different, and we really don't know. We have to hope that whatever the devs choose, they do a good job with it. Whatever they end up picking, that they end up doing a, you know, a version that people enjoy, right? So, I think what I want you guys to take from this, again, what I think we should think about going forward, right? Whatever happens in the future, I want you guys to look at the system and evaluate how exactly it's being done. If Splatoon 4 is revealed to be free to play, I don't think it should be criticized just off the fact that it is free to play and nothing else. I think that it's important we look at, okay, how exactly are they doing free to play? How are they going to make it happen? What are they going to do about it? This also brings up one more point. Something else I also forgot about for Splatoon, right? The idea that you pay, you own the game forever, right? I forgot to bring this up earlier, so I'm going to do this now, right? If you paid for Splatoon 1, it doesn't matter that you paid $60 for the game. You can't play online Splatoon 1. Obviously, the single player you get to keep, but you'd probably keep that anyway. And obviously, you get to keep the game a lot longer without actively being invested. But that is a factor. Unless you have Pretendo. True. That's true. Alright. I think that's where we'll wrap it up, guys. Thank you for talking with me about it. Will we do a poll? No. Because we are not here to get an answer. I don't care what the majority of people want right now. I just want us to be able to look at it more critically. And I hope that I've accomplished that. I like free-to-play Splatoon because it can make the game more accessible to people, which will lead to more community growth and activity. That's true. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody.